ערב טוב. קודם כל אני רוצה להתנצל, אבל אני אדבר הערב באנגלית, גם למשפחה שלא נמצאת, שיבינו. ויש שני אחים שמדברים בעברית הערב, אז אני ואבא נדבר באנגלית. אני יודע שהמורה ציפי בוודאי גם תשמח שהבנות שהגיעו גם ילמדו קצת, ואני בטוח שזה יעזור להם בהמשך. I can't believe it's been a year since Ima passed. I keep going to bed every night hoping I'll wake up from this nightmare. I can't bring myself to use the words Ima died. Only Ima passed. The words Ima died is so final and cold and so unfathomable. But Ima passed is to say she passed from point A to point B, from Olam Hazeh to Olam Haba. It's an elevation of status, not a demotion. I always knew Ima was incredible. I tried to appreciate her in our 38 years together. However, being a year without Ima, I now know that she was even more incredible than we could have ever imagined. Ima worked 2 jobs, made meals, kept the house in order, worked in the garden, made Shabbatot and Chagim, called all the children and grandchildren, planned every family simcha or event, gave advice, babysat her grandkids, kept the family together, and more. Ima was like Superwoman, and in the last year without her, it's taken the effort of the entire family to try and work together to just try and pick up some of the things she did. We do what we can, but we recognize that we're not as strong, wise, or organized as Ima. So we'll continue to try and do our best, and remember that we had Superwoman for an Ima. Ima had no ego, she was friends with everyone, and no one in the world had a bad word to say about her. She was positive and all that was good in this world. She worked tirelessly on behalf of her family. Growing up as a kid in New York, I remember coming home from school, and Ima usually wasn't home from work yet. Usually Bubby was there, or my older sister Chai Batya. Ima would get home in the early evening, and no matter how tired she was, she would always cook us a nutritious dinner. She would never skim for an unhealthy meal. After that, she would help us with our homework, do some housework, and then put us to bed. Ima's day probably started at 6:30 in the morning and only ended when we went to bed at 9 p.m. Ima worked 40 years straight on behalf of her family, and I don't think I ever heard her complain once. She wasn't a complainer, she was a doer. When she put her mind towards something, she did it to completion. Ima also worked in the house. She took pride in her home. She always cleaned, she always decorated, she took pleasure in the small things. A nice tablecloth, a nice picture, a clean living room. She always enjoyed taking care of the garden. It was so easy to please her. The simple budding of a flower or growing of grass in her garden made her happy. She enjoyed the smell of the grass after a cut or after the rain. Ima always had a passion for health and sports. Growing up, Ima's mother, Bubby Lorna, was the head counselor of a sleepaway camp in Connecticut called Camp Wani. Ima grew up from a young age going to sleepaway camp every summer with her parents, and color war is where she developed her competitive nature. She played tennis and she swam competitively, as did her mother, Bubby Lorna, and siblings Jason and Andrea. She started as a camper and became a counselor herself, and together with her family ran the camp. In fact, in the first year or 2 of my parents' marriage, Abba even joined for the summer and was in charge of the boys' waterfront. To this day, Ima's name is sketched in the dining room hall of the camp as winner of Best Camper. Camp Wani is where Ima first got interested in sports, and being from a competitive family, it was natural for Ima to get a degree in physical education from Adelphi University in Long Island, New York, which is also where Ima and Abba met. Ima also had 4 boys and a girl, and all the boys were into sports and competitive as well. I remember watching the Olympics with Ima every 4 years since the Seoul Olympics in 1988. She loved the competitions and sat at the edge of her chair as the athletes reached the finish line. As kids, we would play tennis against Ima or even have races. She was always very competitive. And while most kids beat their mothers in sports, we always had a difficult time. Who else can say that their mother was faster than them? It was quite embarrassing for us. After we made Aliyah in 1990 and moved to Beit El in 92, Ima started to work as a gym teacher in the Opana in 93. It was a perfect fit for Ima, except for the fact, of course, that she barely spoke any Hebrew. But Ima was so practical and so fearless that it didn't bother her, didn't stop her. She wasn't afraid to talk or yell in her broken Hebrew with the biggest American accent ever. She said that if the Opana is okay with it, then I'm okay with it. For years and years, she always said, I can't believe I have a job at the Opana. Don't they realize I barely speak Hebrew? She was so appreciative of the Opana. I guess sports is one of those subjects that require other skills and not just speaking the language. Ima took her job so seriously. Whenever something came up last minute and the Opana needed to do something else with the kids, the first class they would cancel is gym. It's understandable, but not for Ima. The Opana would call Ima to tell her she doesn't need to come in today, and she would get upset. I can't believe they're canceling my class. Most teachers would jump for joy, but not Ima. She took such pride in what she did. Ima had such a good heart, she tried to never fail a student. Even if they never showed up for class, she would always make up a good reason why they didn't show up and pass them. Anytime a girl from the Opana got engaged, Ima would get so excited to hear the news. It was like family. The students were like her children. Ima loved her job at the Opana so much. She loved the teachers and the students and her ability to help the girls be both mentally and physically healthy. She also taught aerobics at the Matnas part-time and helped the women of Beit El live a healthier lifestyle. And with all this, she still managed a perfectly run home, and in 38 years, I never heard Ima complain once about how hard she works. She was a machine. No one was able to work as much as Ima or as efficiently as she did, and all this with a warm smile and grace. She lived to satisfy others. She would always say, what can I do to help you? What do you need? Such was Ima, worrying about everyone else but herself. No one could plan a simcha like Ima, whether it was Ima cooking or baking for the simcha weeks in advance or planning weddings like a pro. Every simcha, everyone waited to see what Ima would wear. She always had the nicest dress, was the most beautiful, and always stole the show. Ima was a star speaker. It was well known that everyone waited for Ima to speak at every family simcha. Sometimes Ima would prepare the speech, and sometimes she was so busy with planning the simcha that she didn't have time to prepare. It didn't matter. Her core was so good that when she spoke, she inspired. We believed every word she said, and when she didn't prepare the speech, it would come out even better. She commanded the room, and everyone was silent, waiting to hear her every word. When she spoke her words of wisdom, everyone listened. There was never a dry eye in the room when Ima spoke. Ima, I miss your speeches and your words of wisdom and your unconditional love. After Ima passed away, I told my kids, Savta will always be with us, and she's looking down on us from Shemayim. I told them they can always look at the sky and talk to Savta, and she hears us. My oldest daughter, Yakira, went outside one night for a walk in the evening to talk to Savta. She looked to the sky and saw the stars. She started to talk to Savta, but wasn't sure if Savta was listening. So she looked up in the sky and called out, Savta, are you there? And as she gazed into the stars to get a sign, it immediately started to rain, and the drops fell on her face. She ran home soaking wet, both crying and laughing from joy. She told us that Savta hears every word that we say. I often look up to heaven and talk with Ima. I know she hears us and is guiding us. No one was as organized as Ima. She would write things down on paper, what she needed to do, and cross things off the list as she accomplished them. If Ima told you something would get done, her word was as good as gold. She was known wide and far for her cooking. After I got married, Ima worked months on a beautiful gift for my wife, Farah. She created for her a cookbook where she wrote down all her recipes with her little commentaries by each recipe. This cookbook is now a family treasure. and we have all of Ima's recipes written down in her own handwriting. Ima was strong and more fit than any of her kids. She would run every day at a pace that would make any Opana student jealous. In fact, the first time Ima took my two oldest daughters, who were 9 and 7 at the time, to aerobics class, they thought it would be easy and slow. After all, it's a bunch of softas doing aerobics. That's what they thought. But as soon as Ima got going, they couldn't keep up. They were no match for their softa, and they fell on the floor when they got home. Ima had a special relationship with her grandchildren. She was always happy to see them and be with them. She was happy to take them on an adventure with Abba, but she was also just as happy to be at home with them and just be with them. Ima was the coolest of the mothers. She was young and hip. She wore jean jackets and denim skirts, baseball hats and t-shirts. My daughters took all her hats and sweatshirts and wear them all the time to remember Safta. Several times this year, I was at Rami Levi, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a woman wearing a baseball hat, t-shirt, and denim skirt. The same exact clothes that Ima used to wear. I walked over with my cart to get a closer look, and the woman continued to walk with her cart, so I still only saw her from behind. I could tell she was also close to Ima's age. The first time I saw this, I almost yelled out Ima. But I knew it couldn't be. I didn't know if I wanted her to turn around or not, for if she turned around, it probably wouldn't be Ima. And if she never turned around, then who knows, and maybe it is Ima. I kept on dreaming it would be Ima, and I would run to her and ask her why she played this horrible joke on us. But she turned around, and although she looked a bit like Ima, she wasn't Ima. This happened several times already, and specifically only at Rami Levi Modi'in. Even though Ima would shop at Rami Levi Binyamin, she always did like shopping at Rami Levi. But some of the times, I wouldn't get a chance to see these women from the front, and I didn't want to see them. I wanted to keep on dreaming that I see Ima shopping. And so from time to time, I bump into Ima at Rami Levi, but never approach her. She knows what I'm thinking anyway. Ima is with me in everything I do. So many things will just instantly remind me of Ima. A woman wearing a baseball hat and denim skirt, a beautiful budding flower, a nice Shabbos table, the smell of chicken soup, a good shallant, the smell of cut grass reminds me of her garden, and just any time I try and give advice to my kids, I remember Ima giving us advice. This past Pesach, the first Pesach without Ima, we were going on some family tiyul. I came down to the kitchen and saw my wife Farah crying. And I asked what was wrong, and she said, "I'm making the tuna fish, that's what's wrong." For as long as I can remember as a kid, Ima would always handle the food for every family tiyul, and she always made tuna fish sandwiches. When we all got married and had our own kids, Ima would still make all the tuna fish sandwiches for all the family. I don't want to make my own tuna fish sandwiches. I want Ima to be here to make them. In 2009, Ima's father, my grandpa Leon, passed away. At the funeral when I spoke, she said she is now an orphan. At the funeral when Ima spoke, she said she is now an orphan. I thought this was a strange term to use. After all, Ima was 59, and at the time, she was already a savta. Not someone you would think of in terms of an orphan. But in retrospect, I now understand her. She lost her father, and although he wasn't well for a few years already, there is strength and comfort that you derive from your parents. Your parents are the foundation of your life, and no matter how stable and mature you may be, losing a parent will remove a pillar of stability from your life. Ima was a pillar of stability for me. Although I was 38 with 4 kids when she passed away, I'm still just a kid who needs advice from his mother. So now we lean on Abba and we lean on Bubby for our stability. May they both live to 120. When we rushed Ima to the hospital, Ima fought to the end, and when the doctors came in, she waved a fist to show strength because they had given up on her. When the doctor said she only had 2 to 3 days to live, she lived another 3 weeks and gave them one hell of a fight. No woman was as strong as Ima. In Ima's memory, I have taken upon myself to spread the word about skin cancer for people to get checked out and go to a dermatologist. It's so easy and only takes 5 minutes, and it can literally save your life. So go get checked out. I hope that at 120, we'll be able to see a long list of people who were saved because of Ima. If we believe in living a Jewish life, then we also believe in dying a Jewish death. And in Judaism, death is no more than a night which lies between 2 days. Death is not the end, but the continuation of our journey as Jews, a path to a more perfect place in Olam Haba. This year I've learned how to put things into perspective. Perspective is relativity. I just heard of someone who got 2 fingers cut off. Before all this, I would have said, how horrible. I feel so bad. Now I say, I wish Ima had cut off her fingers. It would be so great if we were in the hospital for that. But as tragic it is to lose Ima, we must put things into perspective as well. In the last year, I heard of children who died from cancer, kids who did not have the opportunity to marry and have kids and grandkids. Someone my age from our community just died and left 4 little orphans. Ima died young at 66, but she lived to see 5 children and 12 great-grandchildren, and that's not a given by any sense of the term. Rabbi Theodor Youngreis, alav shalom, the rabbi who helped my parents become Baal Teshuvas, right before he passed away, wrote a note in the hospital. His family found the note in his pants, and after he passed away, after he passed away. In the note he wrote, a long life may not be good enough, but a good life is long enough. This quote is now on Ima's grave, and it represents exactly how we feel about Ima. Ima lived a full life, maybe not in terms of years, but in terms of what mattered in life. Ima wasn't a procrastinator. Ima was organized, efficient, and extraordinary in everything she did. She was faster than everyone. She excelled in everything she did, and thus she accomplished in 66 years what many don't accomplish in a lifetime. I would like to end by connecting Ima to the last few parshas. Ima was already sick the last couple of parshas, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the last few parshas we talk about our Shalosh Avot and Arba Imaot, Ima being the Ima, our Ima, and being so strong. In Parsha Toldot, we see that Rivka heard Yitzchak that he wanted to bless Esav, and Rivka goes to Yaakov and says, hurry up, dress like your brother, go bring food so that you should get the blessing. And that was an extraordinary act, that by doing that act, she changed history forever. She changed the future forever. And that was a courageous act that could have put her life in danger by Esav, but she did it anyway. And so these parshot, we learn about the strength of our mothers. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that Ima was sick over these weeks. In the beginning of the next parsha, as soon right after Toldot, in Parshat Vayetze, when Yaakov leaves Lavan, we also know that he puts a stone under his head and he goes to bed, and he called the place afterwards Beitel, and he had the dream and the ladder, and the angels came down the ladder, and we have Sulam Yaakov, and Ima passed away in Beitel, right next to Sulam Yaakov. Mamash, the first couple of psukim after Parshat Toldot. And so Ima went to Shamayim from Beitel, possibly using Sulam Yaakov. And I want to say something about Kibud Av V'Em as well, and that maybe we can all take some items, some actionable items afterwards in Ima's memory. Rivka sent Yaakov away and said, go run away because Esav is going to come after you. And he runs away. And it takes, I think, 22 years until he comes back. And when he comes back, he knows that Esav is waiting for him, and he's scared that Esav is going to kill him. And the question is, why is Yaakov scared that Esav is going to kill him if he had just gotten a promise from Hashem that Hashem's going to turn him into a great nation, and his children, and his great-grandchildren, and Hashem just gave him this promise. And he also knows that Hashem gave this promise to Avram and Yitzchak. So why is he so scared of Esav? He has this promise from Hashem, yet he's so scared that Esav is going to kill him. Something doesn't make sense. And one of the possibilities is Kibud Av Va'em. That Yaakov said to himself, in the 20 years or 22 years that he was gone, he was not able to keep Kibud Av Va'em. But Esav, as much as a Rasha he was, there was one thing that he was good at, and that was Kibud Av Va'em. He always went and visited Rivka and Yitzchak, and he was known that he was good on Kibud Av Va'em, even if he wasn't good on anything else. And Yaakov thought and was scared that just on Kibud Av Va'em itself, it would be enough for Hashem to change the decision of making him great and making Esav win and be able to kill Yaakov. That's how strong Kibud Av Va'em is. And I bring this up because Ima was an example of Kibud Av Va'em, how Ima honored her parents, how Ima honored her mother, how Ima honored Bubby, who wasn't even her mother, but people thought that Ima was Bubby's daughter, even though she was only a daughter-in-law. But they were so close, and she honored her so well, that people thought that it was her actual mother. She was so good at Kibud Av Va'em. Growing up, my great-grandfather had a stroke, Grandpa Joe, and he was in the hospital for a couple of years. And Ima would take us every single Sunday to go visit him. And we were young kids, and we didn't want to go. She was able to bribe us with some ice cream that they sold in the hallway. But Ima took us every single week. And Ima was just fantastic at Kibud Av Va'em. And when you honor your parents, then it means you have to honor your grandparents. Because without your grandparents, you would have no parents. And if you honor your grandparents, you have to honor your great-grandparents, because without them, you'd have no grandparents. And if you keep on going up the chain and up the chain, then you will realize that when you do Kibud Av Va'em, you're really honoring Hashem, because He's at the top of the chain. Which also means that when you don't do Kibud Av Va'em, and you go up the chain, it also means that you're not honoring Hashem. And so something that I would like everyone to take out of here tonight is that in honor of Ima, we should take upon ourselves a few things. But before I say that, I'm going to say something else, which is, it took 22 years for Yaakov to come back from Lavan, it took 22 years for Yaakov to come back until he saw Yitzchak. And it just so happens that that is the exact period of time that when Yosef disappeared and the brothers threw him into the cave or into the hole, and then he went down to Mitzrayim, it was 22 years from that moment that Yosef disappeared until Yaakov came down to Mitzrayim to see Yosef. And that is a midah, keneged midah, that Yosef was missing for 22 years, and we know that Yaakov's heart was broken. It's the same 22 years that Yaakov was gone and was not able to keep Kibud Av Va'em. So that is the strength of Kibud Av Va'em. So I'd like everyone to walk out of here with 3 actionable items that we can go home and implement in Ima's honor. Number 1, go to a dermatologist and check yourself out. Number 2, enjoy and appreciate what you have and the family that you have. And number 3, do even more Kibud Av Va'em. And when you do these things in Ima's honor, her neshama will be further elevated to the highest levels. We love you, Ima. We miss you. We hope we make you proud, and we know that one day we'll all be together again. Thank you.